Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live here, live at, live at Film Fanatic headquarters. It is 11:45, April 7th. So I hope everyone's doing good. This is the last video of the last movie that I watched from my most recent trip to world famous Opera House Video. I rented three movies there on Saturday. And so I did a show on RoboCop 2, which was one movie I got. Also, I just finished up doing a review or talk on the latest, most recent Osgood Perkins movie, The Keeper. And today's show is a movie that I just really, really love. I love this movie to death, and I rented this movie on DVD, and that is Charles Bronson's Death Wish. Love this, love this movie. I really can't wait to see the rest of the movies in the franchise. I believe there's like three or four of these movies. I believe that there's four altogether, all starring Charles Bronson. I don't own any of these movies. I don't own Death Wish on Blu-ray or 4K. I definitely need to get an upgrade because I love this movie to death. I watched it the other night, or watched it last night, and I think I did a show on this a while ago when I saw it. The last time I saw Death Wish was probably a couple of years ago, and again, I don't own it, but I just love this movie, and I just think it's such a classic. It's such a great movie. 1974. It's such a gritty. I kind of feel like this movie is part of that whole kind of gritty 70s exploitation realm. It's just really, you know, it's really character driven. It's totally, New York City. It's kind of a grimy movie. It's really violent. Charles Bronson is such an iconic actor. Huge Charles Bronson fan. So many legendary films to his career. This is definitely one of his best films, and the franchise as a whole. Again, it's been so long since I've seen the other films, but I have seen them all at some point, and it was years ago. But just classic, just classic vigilante, uh, you know, just such a classic vigilante movie. Just an impeccable movie. It was directed by Michael Winner, and it came out in 1974. Really great cast. Of course, the late great legendary actor Charles Bronson. Vincent Gardenia, another great character actor. He was in a ton of movies in the 70s and 80s. Also, Hope Lang is fabulous in this movie. Kathleen Tolan, as well as Stephen Keats. Jeff Goldblum is in this film as well, which I totally forgot for some reason. He plays one of the thugs that that kills Charles Bronson's wife in this movie that ignites the entire film. I can't. I mean, this came out in '74, and I think Jeff Goldblum looks like he is probably like 19 or 20 years old. Like, it's crazy. He's a young Jeff Goldblum in this, and when I watched this last night, and I first saw him, I'm like, no way, is that Jeff Goldblum? And I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. I was like, no shit. I was pretty blown away by it. And the other thing that I noticed in this film, and I think it's true, but there's a cop in this movie towards the end of the film, and I do believe it's Christopher Guest who plays the cop, and he's only in it briefly, which is hilarious and crazy because he plays a real straight cop. He's only got a couple of lines, very straight dialogue, not comedic at all. And I'm like, wait, that's a really really young Christopher Guest, and I believe that was him. So, such a great movie. The other thing that's so cool about this movie is Herbie Hancock, the world famous jazz piano player, did all the music for this entire film. So it's super funky, really gritty. The whole movie is just such a gritty, atmospheric movie. And I love the whole character of Charles Bronson in this movie because he's like somebody, who is so, you know, well, he's kind of a conscientious objector. He doesn't believe in guns. He's not a fan of guns. He doesn't believe in violence. He's kind of a liberal guy, if you will, and he's kind of thrown into these circumstances where he feels like, he's backed into a corner, with his wife getting murdered and his daughter getting raped, basically, and just just the most horrible, traumatic thing that can happen to someone. And so he basically, Charles Bronson's character just goes off the rails and goes crazy, and he ends up going down this really dark path where he eventually gets this gun, and he's very reluctant. He is not this kind of person, especially in the beginning. There's this big switch for his character in this film because of these horrible, horrific, situations or situation that happens to him, and you just see him slowly go down, this downward spiral, and he eventually gets this gun, and then he ends up killing a couple of these guys that are would-be robbers, and it just goes from there. And then he ends up going on this like killing spree and becomes known as this vigilante, and he gets away with it. And then the whole thing that's really interesting about this story, which kind of forgot, was that he ends up, with the New York Police Department. They end up basically, they find out who is responsible, who is responsible for these killings, Charles Bronson's character, after investigating it, and they catch him. But then you find out that the New York Police Department is a fan and has empathy towards this guy, so they protect him, which is crazy. And then they basically, the whole movie leaves or ends where he's killed all of these people, and they know it's him. They have him. They have caught him, but then they basically just move him to Chicago. So then he ends up moving. He kind of goes underground for a while and then goes to Chicago, and it kind of it segues perfectly into Death Wish 2, the second one. Pretty wild though. I forgot. Death Wish was one of those movies, and in general, Charles Bronson movies. All the great westerns, all the great action movies that he's been in. He was a legendary actor. Definitely one of the first kind of American action stars that I remember seeing. That was also in dramatic roles. That growing up watching a lot of his films. And my dad, also was a really big, or it still is a big Charles Bronson fan. So I remember as a kid watching, all of these films as a kid, and seeing a lot of his other films, a lot of the spaghetti westerns, a lot of westerns that he was in, just all these iconic roles. And he typically always, Charles Bronson's always known to kind of play these iconic kind of badass roles, and he's kind of known for that. But such a great actor, and so many great roles. He's probably most well known for some of the spaghetti westerns that he's done, and probably Death Wish. These movies were a pretty big big franchise. These movies were a very big hit, and it's also this came out in the 70s, and it's 1974, so wicked old school. And this is a movie that, by today's standards, could not be made today. Not politically correct, because some of the outrageously horrible things that some of the people say in the film. It's pretty shocking, but it couldn't be made. This is definitely a movie that could not be made today because of, sensitivity around some of these issues, which I get. But classic 70s by a legend. So many great films to Charles Bronson's credit. Death Wish 2, which came out in 1982. Of course, The Great Escape, amazing film. Just one masterpiece after another. Great Escape in 63, Hard Times in 75, Death Wish 3 in 85, The Mechanic in 72. I don't own any. I think I do own a few Charles Bronson westerns, like his spaghetti westerns, but there's so many of his films I don't own, and it's just like one classic after another. And again, he was so prolific in the '70s, my favorite decade. So, Death Wish 3, which came out in '86, The Mechanic in '72, Red Sun in 1971, The Dirty Dozen, of course, amazing film. I actually no, I bought that last year on Blu-ray. I love that movie to death. 1967, Death Wish 4 and '87, Death Wish 5. Wow, there's five of them. 1994. Holy shit. Okay. Uh, Cato's Land in '72, Death Hunt in '81, Mr. Majestic in 1974, Midnight, 10 to Midnight in 1983, Breakheart Pass in 1975, The White Buffalo in 1977. Just so many great movies. Cold Sweat in 1970, Murphy's Law in 1980, Chino, which is a badass movie. That movie is really good. 73, I have that on DVD as well. Breakout 1975, Rider on the Rain 1970, Telton 1977, Final Shot 1970, Farewell Friend 1968, From Noon Till 3 1976, The Wallachia Papers 1972, The Evil That Men Do, another badass movie 1984, Love and Bullets 1979, The Stone Killer 1973, Yes Virginia, There Is a Santa Claus 1991, House of Wax, wow, he's in the original one, 1963, Messenger of Death, another badass movie 1988, Family of Cops 1995, Riding Shotgun 1984, Guns of Diablo 1963, Congente, Forbidden, pronouncing that wrong, 1989, Assassination 1987, This Property is Condemned in '68, Guns for San Sebastian '68, Apache 54, You Can't Win 'Em All 1970, Crime Wave 1953. That's a killer movie too. Donato and Daughter in 1993. Battle of the Bulge. Wow, yeah, another classic. 1965. Villa Rides 1968. Four for Texas 1963. I mean, Jesus. Veracruz 1954. Kid Gawaland 1967. St. Ives 1976. Legendary. But Death Wish, iconic. What an iconic franchise. Can't wait. I got to revisit all of these movies. So thanks again. We'll see you next time. Peace.